I love today's conversation with Jessica Barile with the DesignWorks Collective. I have known Jess for many, many, many years. We actually used to work together at Snap Retail, and she is incredibly rooted in retail, spending almost 30 years in this industry. And you're going to hear it from her in this episode today. She's so passionate and just loves retail so much. In today's episode, you're going to learn what it really takes to build a successful store, how to really create partnerships with the brands that you sell, and getting resources and tools to help support you in selling them, making you a stronger salesperson, making your team stronger, as well as just having really incredible relationships with the brands that you sell. We also are talking about how to stand out. Jess has worked with probably thousands of retailers over the years, and she really knows what works in the industry, what's really working for retailers to stand out, be seen, build a successful business. And I ask her a really fun question at the end of today's episode. If she started a gift store today, what are the 3 things she would do? And so even if you've had your business for many, many years, this is a really great way to kind of reframe and look at your business. Like, if I were to start over today, what would I do? And hearing Jess's answers, she just really lays it out because she has been in this industry for a long time in how to build a store today that will be successful today, but also long term. A lot of the strategies she talks about is really building a resilient store. And that's exactly what we focus on here on the podcast. So I am so excited for you to tune into today's episode. Before we dive in, here's a little bit more about my guest. Jessica Barile started in the gift industry as a multi-line sales rep in Boston over 28 years ago. Since then, she's managed rep groups, was a salesperson for a large gift manufacturer, worked for Snap Retail, a marketing platform for gift stores, and for the last 14 years, headed up the specialty sales for DesignWorks Collective, a group of brands that include Patty Wax Candles, DesignWorks Inc., Gentleman's Hardware, and Here's How. You can learn more. Actually, Jess, at the end of this episode, very end, she gives her cell phone number, her email address. We have it all in the show notes. She is opening the door. She loves connecting with retailers, having conversations, and really helping support you. Like, retail is in her blood. She loves it so much. So reach out to her. She's such an incredible resource. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Crystal Vilkaitis, the Wolf of Main Street, and this is Rooted in Retail. Jess, welcome to Rooted in Retail. I am thrilled you're here.
So happy to be here, Crystal. It's amazing.
Long time coming. We've known each other for so long. You're one of the first people I met in this industry because we worked together at Snap Retail. You are super rooted in retail. So I would love for you to take a minute and share with our listeners a little bit more about you and your retail journey.
Absolutely. So I have always been in sales. Shocking, anyone who knows me. And I actually was living in Boston working in like high tech sales. And I had a very good friend who owned a retail store. And so I would work there on Sundays and, loved, like, just was like, how does this work? What's buying all about? And so she took me to the Boston gift show, which doesn't even exist anymore. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I love, and at the time, the group that I like, the booth that I saw, because there was all temporary booths, that I was like, wow, was at the time called Chris and Company, and is now Just Gotta Have It Northeast. So I just was wowed by the whole thing. And I was like, if I could ever just choose anything in the world, I would want to do this. Well, the company I worked for in high tech got purchased, and I got $6,000 and in the buyout. And I was like, I'm rich. And I was like in my late 20s. So it felt rich. And I thought, well, now I can do this job that's commission only because I have this big pot of money. Little did I know, but I was able to make it work. And I actually, it's funny, I called the gentleman who ran Chris and Company. He was going to step out of his territory repping and like run the company. So he's looking to replace himself in the Boston territory. And I started this like campaign for him to give me the job. Like, anyone I knew who either had a company in the gift industry or had a store or whatever, I asked them to write me letters of recommendation because I had no experience in it at all. had a lot of good corporate sales experience, but nothing in retail. And finally, he called me, I remember, like, in November, and he said, "There's, like, 2 months of this letter writing campaign," and he was like, "Stop with the letters, and you have the job." And I was like, "Yay!" So it was I lobbied for myself and got everyone I knew, multiple brands and number of stores. And from the very first day, I was obsessed with product, with the sales process. I think I drove him crazy because I would be like emailing. We didn't have texting really then, but emailing voicemails at like midnight because I'm like, oh my God, I had this day and I'm doing my paperwork because we hand wrote every order and then we faxed them all in. It was ridiculous. But I was beyond, and I did that for 12 years. I was a multi-line rep, loved it, and also worked part-time at a couple stores just because I loved seeing what people were buying, and it kept me on the trends, and did that. And then I moved to Connecticut and worked for Two's Company for a couple of years, which was great, different experience because it's a manufacturer working directly for the manufacturer versus a multi-line rep. And then I came to Snap Retail where I met you and worked with a number of the larger rep groups in getting them excited and involved with the Snap Retail's platform. And then I really missed sort of the true product sales and product development. And so I was lucky enough to meet our owner at DesignWorks Collective. At the time, it was just Patty Wax. We had one brand. We now have, I don't know, 6 brands and more on the way, and head up all the sales for that and love that as well. So I feel like, I've done a little of everything between working at stores, working on the road, working for a manufacturer, and I don't even know what I would say would be my favorite because I really love it all.
Oh, I love it. Well, this is where, like, again, you are so rooted in retail and this is so your industry. And we're so lucky to have you on the podcast today to learn from you. So I want to just dive in because with almost 3 decades of retail, you've seen a lot from recessions, the e-com booms, today's challenges. So what's the biggest truth to you, in your opinion, that stayed rock solid no matter how much the industry changes?
I mean, honestly, I think it's the personal connection.
Mhm.
Even though we've had so much technology shift, from the days I was handwriting orders, no one opens or buys a store to say, like, I'm going to get rich and I'm like a hardcore business person who, like, this is how I want to, this is going to be the avenue for my accounting background. Like, it happens, we have some incredible retailers who have brought that to them, but really what it is they're creative humans. They thrive on connection. They wanna give something to their community. They want to be part of special occasions, whether it be a birthday or a wedding or a baby or whatever it may be, or just a little treat for oneself. It's all based on connection. And then the reps, are connected to the stores because they're fulfilling and helping them fulfill this desire and kind of dream that they have to have this kind of a beacon in the community. These independent stores are really beacons in the community, tying it all together. And then, folks like myself who are on the manufacturer side, we kind of need to read all the rooms and really see what people are buying, which to me also speaks a lot to the whole relationship connection side, working with our reps closely to make sure that they are, feeling that connection to us. I remember when I was being interviewed for this job, Joe said to me, "What do you do to make sure your reps are, the reps are selling your stuff first or most?" And I said, "Assuming all of your sales tools and all that are up to date and in good shape," I said, "they will sell for you if they like you. You always will do best for the folks that you like and that like you." And so that connection is so important on the rep side and on the manufacturer side. I think connection to me is the number one thing, relationships and connections.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I just feel like that's something that we have to remember as technology is evolving so faster than we've ever seen it before. And there are so many benefits to AI, but we do need to remember that relationship, the personal connection. We get, and I catch myself, I actually just caught myself doing it today, this morning, where you get so busy in your own life that you won't, like, stop and check in, like, you're just emailing, like, your missions, and Callie, who's on our team, is really good of being like, "How are the kids?" or "Love the sunset," or, like, the personal connection. I was reading an email from her, I'm like, "Man, she's so good at that relationship," and that's meaningful. Like, we can't get away from that, so I couldn't agree more.
Well, I think too, like even, social media. So, I'm on Instagram and I literally and it's like a hybrid of my it's a personal account, but I share a lot of work stuff. I'm very cognizant of, the fact that there's a ton of people connected to me. So I'm careful about that kind of thing. However, I like to share things about myself because I think that, I have dogs, you have dogs, this store owner has dogs, this rep has dogs. Like all of a sudden, all the dog owners unite and you wanna be connected to people who have similar hobbies, similar loves, similar desires, similar you like the same music even. So I think that, those are the kinds of things that, like, go back to that connectedness. You need to be accessible, you need to be willing to show those aspects of yourself in like you just said, like, checking in and saying, "How are you doing?" or "What's going on?" Because the reality is, like, those are the things that keep all the relationships going. And those are the little bits of connection that really, it happens to be sales 101. It just also happens to be how I am. But it really is like you got to listen to what people are interested in and go from there. And that's really gonna always overtake software or chat GPT or care or whatever.
Yeah, it's so true. And so I just feel like anyone listening to this, if you haven't checked in on somebody, if it's a partner, if it's an employee, if it's a customer, like that can just go so far. That can be a really good thing to focus on this week. And obviously, we don't want to, it's not a one and done, but if you haven't done it in a while, this could be a really good time to do it.
And I also think too, in sales, be it any level, like my part of the sales process, a rep's part of the sales process, a store owner is part of the sales process. If you're not checking in, you also don't know where people are at in terms of things going in their lives that might actually affect how they're doing, why they may not be at their top of their game, the expectations you can have of them for that period of time. And I think all of that is really everyone has responsibilities and obligations, but we also need to keep that human side as part of it, as part of the equation. And, you know, everyone is going through something. Things are hard, not always, and sometimes things are amazing. So I think knowing that and checking in and doing that work is what can make you be a better manager because you are setting really appropriate expectations.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well said. Okay, Jess, now from your perspective, what are some of the smartest ways indie retailers stand out and build loyalty in their communities? Because you've been doing this a long time. You've worked with a lot of retailers. So, what are some of those standout things retailers are doing?
Well, so I think, right first thing is what we've just been talking about. Like make yourself accessible. The stores that I think really thrive are where people actually have access to the owner or the man, the main person, the manager, the owner, what have you. They like to support, they want to see the person that they are supporting. I think it depends on what your vibe is. I don't think it's like you have to sponsor a softball team or, put your name out there like that. But I do think you have to be out there in your community. You're asking your community to support you, and you in turn have to support your community. And sometimes that can be one of my favorite stores here in Nashville, and it's not even a customer of ours, but she is all about creating community in her store. So not only does she have a craft table that at any given time people can come in and just find a space to sit down and, you know, I don't do a craft or whatever it may be. Like sometimes she has classes and sometimes it's just like it's craft night, come and bring your craft. She also has opened up this patio and she just encourages people to come and like hang out and it's great cuz it sometimes it's like not everyone in a group of 4 is all wanting to shop. So if not, you're sitting in the patio having a coffee or a glass of wine or whatever it is. I think being accessible in your community, encouraging your community to be in your store for things that are not necessarily about spending money. I think that's a big thing. And I think especially when store like right now, there are certainly it's, we're in a quirky time in terms of the economy, people's feeling their ability to spend money. I think if you create a space that that's not the focus on, that's a really big thing. It's not about coming if you feel comfortable in a space and you want to go in to connect with the retailer because she becomes your friend or acquaintance or whatever, or you want to go in and, you know, have a cup of coffee, glass of wine, see the dog that might be there, what have you. Then when you are ready to spend money, you're going to do it in the place that you're most comfortable. So, making it an open space, making people feel comfortable, no pressure in terms of buying things, because then they will want to buy things there when they can or when they need to.
Yeah, I love that idea, and I think it's very much it's the long game. Like, we don't necessarily have to have the sale now, and I'm very much into astrology, which I sometimes talk about on this show, and I recently heard an astrologer say, "This year, 2025, is the year of surviving, not thriving." And so, if we're just surviving, let's open up our stores and we could do a pop-up coffee shop or a pop-up wine night. We even had a coffee cart, like people come on and talk about it. We'll link to that episode in this episode. But like to your point, be the place where they're comfortable. And then when we're thriving, we're out of survival mode. Now we're thriving. Oh my goodness. You are just top of mind. They want to give back. They want to fill up your cup because you filled up theirs. That's such good advice.
It's that whole sort of trend of third spaces, right? It's like you have your home, you have your work, and where's the other place that you connect with people? It can be a retail store. And I think that that's the one of my, it's funny when you talk about like the things, the big trends that have happened in retail. There's a lot of them are technology based, but the ones that are not are like the absolute opposite of technology. It's not having your phone, not having a computer, human connection, doing something usually creative with your hands. A lot of these stores are doing pop-ups that have to do with creating something. And I think those are really fun trend to see. And it's also pushed the boundaries of those people who provide those kinds of services and classes and stuff that the retailers are partnering with. All of a sudden it's, you can do all sorts of things. I would have never, we have 10 candle pouring spaces across the country. We have retail also. It's not our big focus, but it's really like people love coming here and they get to connect with their friends and they learn something about how to make a candle. And if they happen to buy something great, but really they're coming in to have an experience. And I think experiential retail is so important.
I agree. We talk about it so much on the show, and that is a perfect example of pouring candles. It also is like a meaningful gift. It's something I could talk about. I get to pick the scent. Like, I love that idea too. You have to create experiences. Okay, so Jess, what tools or resources do you think retailers overlook from vendors or reps that could make a big difference in their business?
So I think, I mean, I understand the struggle of this. So I say this, but then I'm like, but we really don't have a great way of doing it. So, and it is one of the things that retailers have really asked for is like, there is not a single repository of assets. So, we have a rep resource link that has all of our brand assets and all of our like shelf talkers and all of the things that a retailer might want or need to help increase their sales or just call out something, for patty wax, for instance, so many of our candles are FDA approved food safe. And we have shelf talkers that talk about that or how do you remove the wax from a candle. If there was one place, and it's funny because it's like kind of like what Snap Retail was sort of trying to do, where literally every brand could just put their resources and have them be able to be like, I need this from this from this from this. There's really not a core marketing portal. So instead, a retailer who might have 250 lines, they have to go to my B2B site or they go to their rep and say, I want these things, but they also don't necessarily even know what is available. So I think that that's one thing that really, I mean, that's a very basic thing, but it is something that we don't do as an industry very well. And I think that it makes a big difference in stores because they're interpreting the brand story. Whereas if you just let the brand do it, they're probably, they've spent a lot of money figuring out what that story is and how to put it out there. Or even if it hasn't been a lot of money, it's been over time, they've honed their message, whatever. That's something that I think that they're not taking advantage of all of because they don't know, not because they're ignoring it. They just don't know, and I don't know how to make that easier for them, but I think that there's a lot of resources that all of us in the manufacturing side have created that are underutilized, not because of any shortcoming of the retailer, but because it's cumbersome and they don't know it's there.
Yeah, and this is where I'm so glad we're having this conversation because if there's I bet many of our listeners don't know, to your point, and they just need to ask. Ask your vendors, ask the rep groups, "Hey, do you have shelf talkers for me? Is there a story associated to this? Do you have images?" Like, this could even be part of, like, if you're trying to decide if you're bringing on some new lines, I wanna bring on new lines that support me with assets and copy and like, all these things that are really gonna set me up to sell the product. And I think what I've heard from vendors like you and going to conferences, you guys want that information, and so as a retailer, you have that influence to say, "Hey, okay, you don't have those things. Can you make them for me?" Like, ask, right? They could be very inclined to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, it's sort of a little bit of a lesson for people like myself. Like we assume that, I think there's so many every, when reps are being trained, either being onboarded as new reps or, we do 2 trainings a year or 3 trainings a year depending on the brand for new seasonal launches. But, when you've had the same reps for 10 years, I'm like, where in my mind I'm going, where the rep resources are, where all the shelf talkers are. Well, you know what? You have a lot of stuff to manage. Maybe it's also a little bit on us to be like, hey, here are the 3 new amazing shelf talkers. Really, they've been updated. They're amazing, yada, yada. Here they are. Don't forget, proactively send them out. We maybe have to be better about that too. So I think that that's something that, in all of it, everyone is so tight for time. When you're doing a training week, these reps are literally sitting through 30 different presentations. They're like zoning out, and I get it. We're zoning out after doing, 8 or 10 of them. And how do you prioritize? And there's so much data to remember and to and what do you prioritize? So, and that's actually even just sort of one of the things that I speak to our internal customer support team about is like, you know, prioritizing the most important details because the reps, their brains are so full. They are so data, the abundance of data and the abundance of information is overwhelming. And so, like, keep it simple, straightforward and simple. Get rid of some of the words. I literally, this is my rule to them. I say, write the email response in a way that they can read the whole thing at a stoplight when they're at a red light, which is scary. Not encouraging anyone to read emails at a stoplight, but they are. And so not while you're driving, while you're stopped. And I also say make sure you write the information in a way that they can forward that email to their customer and the customer is getting all the information they need. You don't need to be, I mean, you can be pleasant obviously, but keep it to the facts because there's just so much data. So, if you're like, and also don't forget about the shelf talker, that's not the time. But we need to be better about also reminding them where those things are and that they exist and that if there's something that they are missing, we are here for that.
Yeah. Well, I love that you say that, Jess, because I'm sitting here thinking, like, okay, obviously, we know the retailer has a million things that she or he needs to get done every single day. And so for them to remember to be like, hey, do you have this for me? Like, you do feel like the vendor, it's their job, right? Or it's the rep, it's their job to really provide that for you. And I think that, across a lot of industries, it's just not there yet. Some are better than others. So this is a good conversation we're having. And I know we have reps that listen to this show too. Like, I really hope that we both, but for our listeners, if you're not being provided that, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to request because I do feel like the vendor wants to support retailers. And the more that they have to sell product, the more successful they're going to be. Yeah.
And I also think that this very topic is one that is a value add with using your reps. Because if you are ordering on a B2B site or electronically, you're never going to know about those things. They're never going to take your suggestions. No one's ever going to print it out for you and bring it to you, you know, that type of thing. So this is a great thing for reps to sort of remember like, oh yeah, that is one of the value adds that I can provide when you're kind of figuring out how to navigate that.
Yeah, and lean on your reps. And we'll also link to reps are local. We interviewed Kelly Bristol on the show. We'll link to that too. If because we had listeners after the show be like, "What is a rep? I don't work with a rep. I didn't know." And so if you don't have any, we'll link to that. Be sure to check them out cuz reps are also a tool. Like you want to leverage the tools in the toolbox and reps are a big one.
And they can also help, they can do a little of the sifting for you. Like you then don't have to do all the discovery. You can say, "Hey, I buy these 10 things from you. What do you got?" And they can just rattle off the bullet points versus you having to go to like at each individual vendor and figure it out independently.
Right, exactly. Okay, love that. Okay, so we've talked about the word partnership in here, relationship, and really working together. This is a great segue as you're viewing your reps and vendors as a partner, which we really do recommend. So that is mentioned a lot in the industry, but what does it really look like in practice? I want to talk about here. So, can you share an example or two of retailers thriving because of true collaboration with their reps and vendors?
So I think we're about to see a really like a time of the year that you see this the most because stores are doing a lot of community events. And it might not even be sort of the new way of community events where they're, creating these spaces. They're truly shopping oriented events like open houses and that kind of thing. But this is the time where reps are asked to partner with their retailers to support their brands in their stores during these events. And, it's prevalent enough that we have protocols in place for some of our brands for things like giveaways, raffle gifts, um, demos, depending on the brand, what have you. This is not a new opportunity for partnership. This is something that, this has happened forever, but it is one where you really truly can be a partner in an event to your retailer. And it's sort of all of us involved because we would provide we can, or the manufacturer can provide the giveaway or the perk or whatever it may be, the incentive, that value add, the extra thing. The rep is adding the warm body at the open house to manage the information that's being or insight sales, what have you. And then of course the retailer is benefiting from having all that there. So I think that this is a very simple one, but I also do think that in a more abstract way, another area of partnership is when it comes to shows. And I know that there's been times where reps will like come in early or take time out of their regular show special. They're partnering with them so that they can, they're asking, what do you need from me to make your show experience as easy as possible, as cost effective as possible? How can I make that work? So I think that's a opportunity for like not only the vendors, the reps, and the retailers, but even in some cases, the shows themselves will do things to encourage retailers to come to their markets. And I think that's another area of partnership, that's just sort of the full circle of everyone. Well, I think it's one of the things I'd say is to your retailers is you have to communicate what you really need and what you want, and there may be some, I want to say tip for tap, but there will be some, like if you come, I'm going to expect an appointment with you if I help, make that happen. Or, the famous is we'll give you a lunch ticket if you make an appointment. But I mean, those are things that actually do help. And I think that that's like an easy, everyone can do it kind of partnership thing. But I think it's important that the retailers speak to their reps and their manufacturers, depending on who you work directly with, and let them know what you need.
Yeah, it's so true. You have to it goes back to asking, and I just think, what's the harm? So, right now, we're filming this in October, and so holidays, you mentioned giveaways, but if you had your anniversary, if you're doing different holidays, you wanna create a unique thing that's all just you, right? Like, reach out to your vendors, will they provide giveaways? I think also one thing I've learned is vendors, rep groups, and the market centers themselves are willing to, whether it's a free lunch or if it's to pay for a hotel night or a flight credit, or sometimes they do giveaways that you could enter to win, your whole trip is covered. Like, there's a lot of ways to offset the costs, and also talking to your vendors about, do they do loyalty programs? Like, what kinds of show specials, stuff like that. And, we heard it from Jess. We heard it from you, Jess. Like, the vendor isn't always great at communicating these things, or the rep isn't always great at saying, hey, these things are happening. So, you showing up and asking, do you do giveaways? Do you have loyalty? Can you offset travel? Like, what does it hurt to ask your vendors that could really help your business?
And again, gets all the way back to the very first thing I said, which is community, connection, conversation. You have to be communicating to get what you need or what you want, or even to be considered for it. I do think too that, there has to be an expectation, I would say, when you are asking, like I just said, like if someone says like, hey, I can get you a flight credit or I can get you a hotel room, know that they're going to say, okay, well, I'm going to want some time with you. And the same thing with the giveaways. Like, I mean, I always joke and say to every one of my reps in customer service, everyone that comes to me and says, "Can we do this?" I will always say yes. There's never a no. I never, ever, ever say no. There are often yes with a caveat. Like, yes, we're happy to contribute 200 of something or 100 of something. However, I've noticed that you haven't written an order in 6 months. And if we're going to give 200, giveaways out, people are going to fall in love with their product and they're going to come back looking for it. That's the whole point of doing a giveaway. So I'd love to see an order placed to support that. So know that it's a two-way street. You should always ask, but you should also know that someone might expect something in between. I mean, not in between,
In return.
in return. Exactly. That's the word I was looking for. And I think that is truly partnership, right? It's like, I'm happy to help you. You also have to know that there's an expectation of something coming back to us. And that's common sense.
It's common. It absolutely is. And for any of our pro Indera members, we've got a recording in the training. Beth Rich, who is a very successful retailer in the space, she spoke at my conference Evolve this year, 25, and she shared creative ways she works with vendors and manufacturers. So we have that in the portal. Listen to Beth's video so you can get additional ideas from her. Joinindera.com. If you're not a member, check it out. Now, Jess, I have a really fun question for you before we go into the resilience round. So, if you were opening your own independent gift shop today, knowing everything you know from the past 28 years, what three things would you focus on first to ensure success now and in the future?
I love this question because it is literally my dream to open a store someday. I also love what I do so much, and I feel like I learn so much from what I do, so it's all good. So I think the very first thing I would do is do, back to my theme, just as much outreach as possible. I would want to plop the store in a place where there's a lot of other retail and or, be a destination. So I would first and foremost go to every single one of my fellow retailers and fellow business owners and make sure they know who I am, make sure they know what I'm all about, introduce myself, create a community vibe, because there's nothing better than, like, having a restaurant be like, "Oh my god, the cutest new store just opened up next door," so that's the first place that you start with the community. Secondly, I would say, and it's partially maybe it's 1 point, the second half of that is be accessible. You have to be the face. You cannot you have to be the face of your own business, in my opinion. The best businesses are, even if you are not, you know, accessible every time, they need to know your story. They need to know who you are. There needs to be a personal connection because people want, there's a huge, we know Small Business Saturday and, support small business and indie retailer and all that. There's a lot of pushes for all of that. But if they don't know who they're supporting, they don't know the face behind it, the story behind it, you could be anybody. So I would say that make sure that everything you do in your branding, your outreach is personal. Make yourself accessible. Doesn't mean that you have to be the only one there 24/7, but if you're not there, you should be a human, discussed as a human, considered, that although it shouldn't be the owner's not here, it should be Jessica's not here right now. She'll be here later. She'd love to, she wants to meet all her customers. So I think that's all sort of one thing. I think I really do think that, I'm always torn because I think there's so much talent in merchandising that, you could have 3 stores on the same block that sells the same thing, but it could look totally different. However, I also know that not every consumer sees things that way. One of the superpowers of retailers is their creativity without question. I think I used to joke back when I started that, like, people open stores because they ran out of they're either, like, the best gift giver in the world and they wanna, like, make that superpower out there in the universe of their community, and or they ran out of rooms in their house to decorate, and they were like, "I need to merchandise every day of my life." And this was a way to do it. I do think that it's important to know, not just know the people, but know what else is in your community. You do not wanna replicate what's out there. You want to be creative. You want to show your strengths in your product assortment and make it so that I think that the strongest stores are typically either like a mega store where there's nothing around it and you're a destination, or you're part of an incredible shopping area where there's a lot of diversity and people can just make a day of it. And so I think knowing what other people have and supporting those other businesses by recommending, "Oh, I don't have baby, go to this store, they have great baby. Oh, well, you need a really cute dress, this person has it." So I think knowing all of the people around you. And then I think, partnering with your reps and manufacturers like we've been talking about. You know, I would like to think I wouldn't just have like a stack of 250 orders, or emails of orders. I would actually have relationships with these folks because I'd want their support. I'd want them to tell me about the shelf talkers. I'd want them to print them out and maybe laminate something for me. I don't know, but I think it's again, it's like all of it is relationship. I know that where to find all the product. That part is like you don't open a store if you don't know the product side of it, I don't think, or not at least a store that's set up for success. But it's making yourself really a human behind all of it and go from there.
Yeah, so good. So I don't know if that was 3 things, but I feel like we could group some of those things. I mean, I agree, like networking, getting out there, relationship, right? Which the partnership falls into and other retailers and just really building that network of people and then the accessibility and being a part of the brand and then merchandising. I mean, maybe those are so strong to launch a successful store. So, and I hope you do a store one day. Like that would be so fun.
I also think it's important to kind of know what you're not good at. Like, I know I would be a great buyer, but I don't know that I would be the best merchandiser. I don't know that I have, like, the brain to do that, so I think that's the other thing about store ownership that's, important is to, like, it's unlikely you're good at all the things that it takes. So sort of knowing what your weakness, and I think that's just sort of a life lesson in general. Like, I surround myself with my team with people who are way better at things than I am, at certain things because I'm too old to learn all the things. So I just want someone who's gonna, like, know it way better than I do and can just help and support me.
So true. Teamwork makes the dream work. It's so true.
And there's no reason to think that you need to be the know all the things.
No, you can't. Who, not how. Like, you don't need to know everything. Find the right people and then build a really amazing team. Well said. All right. Are you ready for the resilience round?
I think so. We'll see.
Okay. Best business book.
Well, GHTA right now, this is my favorite and best business book.
Yes.
And I will say it's kind of exciting because Wilbur lives in my neighborhood
He
here
does
in
not.
Nashville. Mhm. So, very fun. And I will also say that I just literally had a car problem on my way to the office and had to leave my car at a brand new fix it place. And beautiful spot, called me an Uber on them, took care of it all. And as I'm leaving, picking up all my stuff, I did a conference call from their lobby. As I'm leaving, on the table under their coffee is unreasonable hospitality. And I was like, yes, I see that. And so
Yep.
I feel like I love this book because it's so easy, right? It's not simple, but it's so easy to understand and so easy to implement, even if it's in little spots. I'm really loving what this is all about.
So true. And of course, I have to give a plug because we have a whole training course on unreasonable hospitality inside of Indera for pro members. So be sure to
Okay.
go through that framework and there's videos of Will teaching it with me. So
Oh, that's so cool.
it's such a good
And
course.
this is our GHTA book club book,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be
It's
exciting to see all of the things that the people have taken from it as we've all been reading it
I
recently.
know. I'm so excited for that. Okay. Best retail technology like an app or software.
So, I mean, I to me, something when something is best, it means that it's most used and most accessible and easy. So I honestly would have said before, strangely, Instagram.
Yeah.
You can learn so much about a store, what they're about, what their vibe is, what their trends are, how to lead, how to set yourself up for success in an appointment by going to their Instagram. I always believe you need to visit a store before you start an appointment also, but however, you do get it. And it's also how I find leads for reps and I'll be like, "Oh my god, have you seen this?" You got So I would have said that. And I still think that's super important. And I think because we're in an industry that's visual and creative, that is very strong. I would now say ChatGPT is something that I have literally I mean, I turned the corner and I know I'm barely scratched the surface and I don't know how much I'll get into it, but I was in Austin last week and I just wanted to know like the top 5 best independent retail gift stores and like boom, and it was by far the best and most cohesive and correct list that I've seen.
Yep.
So, I am becoming more and more a fan of using that kind of technology. But I think
Yeah.
they're a good pairing because, you can get that list and then you can go to Instagram and be like, "What does that look like?" So,
Totally.
I wouldn't always think Instagram is like the best business app, but I think because we are such a creative industry, it's a great tool.
I agree. So agree. Okay. How do you keep up with the ever changing retail landscape?
Instagram, is a big one, we're lucky that we have business units in the UK and the EU, so we exhibit at things like Maison. I speak a lot to retailers, like, I'm lucky enough to be on to help with a retailer advisory committee for GHTA and surround myself with, 20 of the top retailers in the country who we ask questions to and like to get the feedback. I do that anyway. I'm very communicative. We do a rep retreat every year where we bring reps in, and really it's not just about training at all. Really, it's about, hey, tell us what you're seeing out there. Tell us what we could do better. So I think it's just asking questions, trend reports, and just staying present. And also, I think
Mhm,
when you're really passionate like I am, it's like it doesn't feel like work. I'm like
mhm.
scrolling on Instagram at new stores and stuff all the time. So
Yeah.
there's also
Just it's built in. It's so true.
just
Yeah.
immersion. It's immersion. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Now, if you had to start your career all over again, what's one thing you do
Mhm.
differently?
Hmm. I think that this sounds like an answer that you'd give in a job interview, so I don't mean to, but it's actually something I just read in Unreasonable Hospitality. I am really not good at balancing I am like because I am so passionate and also love what I do so much, I'm not good at work-life balance.
Mm,
And I just read there's a chapter about how you can't really be your very best if you're not being the best for yourself.
mm,
And I think you start working all the time and hard and being so immersed in it that when you then take your foot off the gas, you almost feel like I think I'd reset my boundaries and priorities earlier on in my career so that it didn't feel like I was like letting anyone down later in your career when you're like, "No, actually, I'm gonna take my vacation because I have 6 weeks built up," or whatever it may be.
exactly.
So, I
Yeah, that's
think
a
or
good one.
setting boundaries better earlier,
Yeah,
you know, I think that's
awesome.
important.
Good one. Okay, Jess, finally, what do you think the future of independent retail looks like?
I think that we're in it's been a rocky-ish road just in terms of how to manage all the newness. And there's some contention around, people versus technology, etcetera. I actually think it's going to circle back. I'm very hopeful for the continued, human element. I think there's going to be, I think that I think the strong will rise to the top, but I think that the people who are the most engaged, the most educated or just passionate will continue to be very, very successful. And I think, like we talked about earlier with third spaces and, having to add this community element, I think that's going to trickle down into the business side of our industry. And I think we're going to see kind of a circling back of the human connections
Mhm.
in all facets.
Yes. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Jess, how can people connect with you and learn more?
You can follow me on Instagram, JP Barile 2013 or JP Barile 13. You can text me or call me. My phone number, I think, do you have it? Do you offer it up? How do you do that,
Oh,
Crystal?
yeah, we could put it in the show notes.
Okay,
Yeah.
203-437-1599. I love connecting. It's my favorite thing. And I learn so much from everyone who I connect with in any capacity. And you can email me at jessica@dwcollect-collective.com.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll link to all this. Reach out to Jess. She is an incredible resource, has some awesome lines. And thank you so much for being here. This was so fun to do. It's so
Oh
good.
my God, it's amazing. Thanks, Crystal.
Yeah, awesome.
I
Everyone
appreciate it.
remember, yes, everyone remember that I am rooting for your success. Have a great week ahead. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rooted in Retail podcast. It means the world to me to have you here. If you find value in this show and you listen on an iPhone, if you could leave a review on the Apple Podcast app, that would be amazing. And if you watch YouTube, if you're a YouTube subscriber, we film this. And so if you rather watch the show, you can also do that over on YouTube. Again, thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.